I was just about to trash the raise request when Layla's response hit my inbox. 5 words, sharp and ice cold. Be grateful you even have a job. No sign-off. Nothing else. Just that. Like she was spitting it out from behind that marble slab she called a desk, probably with a smug little smirk on her face. But here's the thing. I wasn't even the one who'd sent the request. That was Ethan. Quiet, respectful, always reliable Ethan. The guy who literally built the core system that runs our entire automation platform. The guy who could streamline a server in his sleep. Who stayed late without being asked. Who still brought in bagels every Thursday, even after they forgot his 10-year anniversary at the company. And all he asked for was a simple raise. Nothing crazy, just enough to keep up with inflation. 5 years without a single adjustment. Not even a cost of living bump. And that's the reply he got. Not from HR. Not from finance. From Layla Kenwick, the director's wife. That's when things started to get weird. His request wasn't ignored, it was intercepted. See, Layla had been consulting Miles since the merger. But nobody thought she'd actually take over people ops. One minute she's snapping selfies with the interns in a feathered blazer at the quarterly party. And the next she's denying promotions with that icy Chardonnay smile. Miles used to say ROI per body, like we were spreadsheets, not people. Ethan just gave a little shrug and muttered, "Guess the new math says loyalty's too expensive." Later that day I walked past his desk. He wasn't upset, not visibly. He just looked still. Not mad. Not even disappointed. Just switched off. Like his brain had moved from producing to watching. I saw him close out his usual dev tools and open this unfamiliar little program. Then he exported something to an external drive. "You good?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just running backups." Now hang on, quick pause. If stories like this are your thing, where the quiet ones get their moment and karma finally lands where it should, do me a favor. Like the video and hit that subscribe button. I know everyone says it, but it really does help. And the truth is, 97% of viewers don't subscribe, and that one click? It makes a huge difference. Alright, back to it. What I didn't realize at the time, what I'd come to understand in brutal clarity over the next few weeks, was that those backups weren't your standard safety saves. They were clean, surgical, calculated. He wasn't just saving files. He was documenting authorship. Because Ethan Barlow wasn't just our lead systems architect. He was the architect. Every logic path, every automated decision, every system alert, it all pointed back to one thing. A modular logic core that he had designed and coded from the ground up. And when the licensing agreement for that core expired 3 weeks earlier, guess who never signed the renewal? Exactly. Ethan. Not out of revenge. Out of logic. Legal dropped the ball in the post-merger mess. And Layla, brilliant Layla, gave him that little jab about being grateful. But gratitude's a tricky currency. Ethan had been quietly paying it forward for over a decade. With every line of clean code, every bug fixed on his own time, every Thursday bagel drop. But gratitude has a shelf life. And once it runs out, you don't get an outburst. You get silence. And silence was the last thing they should have ignored. Because when Ethan went quiet, that's when the real countdown started. The first email was clean. Straightforward subject line. IP contract renewal action required. Ethan looped in legal, linked the original contract, even highlighted the expiration clause. No drama. No passive-aggressive tone. Just calm, factual, classic Ethan. He waited a few days. Refreshed his inbox more than usual. Nothing. So he followed up, shorter this time, even more polite. Just a gentle nudge. Still no response. Then, right on cue, the board calendar update dropped. Q3 Strategic Monetization Review. The theme? Leverage points in proprietary technology. In other words, let's put Ethan's work on display like it's up for sale. Miles even posted in Slack like he was hosting a TED Talk. Let's show these guys how much margin we squeeze out of Ethan's code. Like Ethan wasn't right there in the damn channel. Like he was just scenery now. Layla tossed in a thumbs-up reaction, then added one of those winking emojis. I remember staring at that message way too long, just trying to figure out how people who've never built anything are always the first to claim credit for what someone else created. Ethan didn't reply, didn't flinch, didn't log off. He just leaned in slightly, opened up his second monitor and got to work. I saw it happen. His whole posture changed. No sigh. No slump. Just a shift from watching to doing. Controlled. Intentional. He pulled up a private legal platform I didn't recognize and started uploading code line after line. Each one tagged with time logs, digital fingerprints, version hashes. Time-stamped. Notarized. Encrypted. That's when it hit me. He wasn't refreshing a portfolio. He was drawing a line. He downloaded the last executable build of the logic core and embedded a validation layer I didn't even know existed. And here's the kicker. Ethan never touched security protocols without looping in DevSec. Ever. But this layer? It wasn't meant for the company. It was for him. A digital fingerprint tucked deep in the binary. A failsafe. A tripwire that bites back. Later that afternoon, I walked by his desk again. Same chipped coffee mug. Same little plant. Same pile of API manuals with dog-eared pages. But his expression? That was different. He looked like someone who'd stopped hoping things would fix themselves and started building the fuse instead. I leaned on the edge of his cubicle. All good. He didn't look up. Just gave a single nod. They want leverage. I'm giving them friction. And the way he said it, no anger, no sarcasm. Just pure focus clarity. The kind that only shows up when someone's been overlooked one too many times. A few hours later, I checked the internal commit logs out of curiosity. Every single core function still had Ethan's name on it. No co-authors. No reviewers. Just him. 12 years of updates, improvements, and optimization. All under one architect. And because of the merger chaos, no one had updated the licensing signature. Legal never renewed it. So the company was running, without even realizing it, on borrowed time. Held together by oversight and ego. But Ethan wasn't running on assumptions anymore. He was locking it all down. Not with threats. Not with noise. With documentation. And Miles? Layla? They were too busy planning their flashy little tech showcase to notice they were already standing on a trapdoor. Thursday morning. 8:55 sharp. That kind of morning where even the air felt expensive. Everyone had espresso in hand, nerves pressed under tailored blazers, fake laughs bouncing off glass walls. Quarterly board reviews were always a performance, but this time, the smug was thick enough to chew. Fairfax Holdings had people in the room. So did the merger side. Even a regional VP showed up. And he only ever came around when someone's bonus depended on it. And there they were, front and center like they were hosting some kind of corporate awards show. Miles and Layla. Same watches, same smug grins, same delusional confidence. Miles clapped his hands together like he was kicking off summer camp. All right, folks. Let's dive in. He clicked the remote, and the big screen behind him came to life. Sleek blue dashboard, full of charts, margin graphs, and automation stats. Every glowing number soaring upward. All powered by Ethan's logic core. This, Miles announced, is the beating heart of Axtra's post-merger operations. Fully streamlined. Fully proprietary. All ours. And that's when it happened. Right as he clicked to the next slide, a pop-up appeared on the screen. At first it looked like some standard system alert, maybe a routine update. But then someone read it aloud. Unlicensed use detected. Daily liability activated. $45,000. The room went dead silent. Like someone had pulled the oxygen out. Miles squinted at the screen, tilting his head like he thought he misread it. What the hell is that? The screen blinked again. Same message. Only this time in red. And now there was a countdown underneath. Runtime penalty clock 1 second. Layla gave a sharp, nasal laugh. Okay, cute. That's just a leftover scare pop-up from testing. But legal wasn't laughing. No one from their side even flinched. The lead counsel, Ramirez, leaned in slightly and clicked his pen once. Pause the deck, he said, calm but clear. Miles didn't hear him. He was too busy jabbing at the trackpad, trying to close the pop-up like brute force would fix it. Layla folded her arms. Seriously? This is what we're worried about. It's just a damn pop-up. But it didn't close. And it wasn't fake. Ramirez finally stood. Quiet. Steady. He pulled a thin black folder from his bag and started flipping through it, slowly but with purpose. His face stayed unreadable, but his hands moved fast. like someone following a playbook he hoped he'd never need. "Can we confirm," he asked, his voice low but firm, "that we have a signed, active licensing agreement on file for the use of the proprietary logic core, specifically the modular version that powers this dashboard?" Miles just stood there. "What? Yeah, of course. It's our code." Ramirez didn't even blink. "Who signed it? I mean, legal? Or finance?" "Somebody did." "Right." He turned to Layla, starting to sweat. "Didn't Ethan renew it last quarter?" Layla squinted like she was searching through her memory. "He sent something. I told him we'd look at it after budget season. You said we were cutting back on redundancies." "Yeah, but..." Miles looked around the room. Now it was silent for real. One of the investors leaned forward, fingers steepled. Another tapped notes into a tablet. No one was smiling anymore. Ramirez slid a page forward across the table. "The last signed licensing agreement is dated 3 years ago. No follow-up renewals. Clause 4.2b says that unless actively renewed, all ownership rights and protections revert to the original software architect." Layla's mouth dropped open, but no words came out. Miles ran his hand through his hair. "So, what does that mean?" Ramirez looked up. Calm. Measured. "It means," he said, "you're showcasing proprietary tech you no longer have the legal right to use. Every minute this dashboard runs, we're on the hook for $45,000. And depending on how this is classified, retroactive penalties could apply." The screen blinked again. 49 seconds. Unlicensed use continues. And just like that, the whole room shifted. The air turned cold and brittle like glass about to crack. Investors stared at Miles like he'd just driven the company straight into a ditch. Layla looked down at her phone. No texts, no calls, no lifeline. Just silence. They were. Programa ChatGPT skazal. And that blinking red warning? It wasn't just a scare tactic. It was a bill. And it had just started counting. Ramirez didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The second he flipped open the tabbed contract and laid it flat on the glass table, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Let's start with a simple question," he said, eyes still on the document. "Do we have a renewed license agreement on file, countersigned, by the creator of the modular logic core?" Every head in the room turned toward Miles. He blinked. Once. Twice. "I mean, we own that, don't we?" Ramirez looked up. Slowly. Steady. "According to Clause 4.2b, ownership remains with the original architect unless it's explicitly transferred through an active, signed agreement. That transfer has to be in writing, signed by both parties. The last agreement on file," he tapped the page, "is 3 years old. Signed by Ethan Barlow. Nothing since." Silence dropped like a curtain. Nobody moved. Even the HVAC hum seemed to take a respectful pause. Layla let out a sharp, nervous scoff. Half a laugh, half a defense. "No, that's not right. Ethan sent over the draft. I remember it. I told him we'd wait until budget season was over. We were consolidating vendor contracts." Ramirez's jaw tightened. "He's not a vendor. He's the architect. Without a signed renewal, any use of his code is unauthorized." Miles looked like the floor had vanished under his feet and he was falling slowly, helplessly. Yeah, he asked about it. Sent me a reminder. Then a follow-up. Layla's head snapped toward him. "You said you were handling it. You said we were cutting deadweight." Miles shot back. "Oh, I'm sorry," she snapped, voice rising. "Did I also tell you to hardwire his code into every revenue stream like it was public domain? I was following your lead. You were busy ordering monogram jackets for your ROI summit. Because you said the optics mattered. Because you wanted to look like a visionary, Miles. You told me the licensing stuff was fluff. It wasn't supposed to be real. It was Ethan. He doesn't even talk in meetings." Now the table was just too small for the storm bouncing off it. Blame shot back and forth like a live grenade no one wanted to hold. Finally, one of the senior investors cleared his throat, loud like a thunderclap in the tension. "Am I to understand," he said, calm but cutting, "that we're now facing potentially hundreds of thousands in liability because your wife made a call without legal review?" Miles opened his mouth, closed it again. Layla's face flushed. Not the red of fury, but the red of being caught. Her voice softened. almost a whisper. This wasn't supposed to happen. It's Ethan. He's not like that. Ramirez closed the folder. Apparently, he is. The screen blinked again. 6 minutes and 41 seconds. Unlicensed use ongoing. Ramirez turned to the board chair. Then to the investors. Until usage rights are secured, I recommend halting all core automation functions immediately. We're not just breaching contract, we're violating it. And damages are stacking up by the minute. Layla stared at the message on the screen, then back at Miles. Fix it. I can't, he said quietly. Then call him. He didn't move. She leaned in closer. Call him. And that's when it hit everyone in the room hard. A fresh, cold wave of realization. They weren't in control anymore. Ethan wasn't circling them. They were orbiting him. All around him, the room was unraveling. Some guy from IT, pretty sure it was Jared, was already crawling under the table, yanking cables like unplugging things might somehow stop the financial bleeding. Another dev was scrambling to boot up an old backup from a dusty server they kept shoved in the back of storage B. Miles barked, "Roll back to V6. That one's clean." While Layla stood stiff behind him, arms locked tight across her chest, staring at the screen like she could blink away the red flashing if she just squinted hard enough. Then the second pop-up appeared. Unauthorized signature detected. License validation failed. Ramirez didn't flinch. Try another version. They rolled back to V5. Same error. Someone muttered under their breath. Jesus. Jared resurfaced, pale and sweating like he'd just seen a ghost. We've gone all the way back to V3, he said. Every logic module still links to Ethan's validation signature. Even the non-executable files flag his compiled hash. There's no clean version anywhere. Miles slumped back in his chair, mouth slightly open like he wanted to speak but couldn't form a sentence. Layla reached for his arm but he pulled away. First time I'd ever seen that happen. Then the board chair spoke. His voice was cool, clipped, deadly. Can someone explain, he said, how we ended up with an entire product line built around tech we don't legally own and can't legally operate? Ramirez looked like a man who hated being right. The answer's in your HR inbox, he said flatly, and in clause 4.2b, which you chose to ignore. One of the younger investors, probably from the tech side, pulled out his phone, tapped around for a second, then looked up. Ethan Barlow, he said. He's listed as the sole software architect and intellectual property holder for the modular logic core. Filed under AXRA designation variant 3. He turned the screen toward the group. It showed the official entry from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Clean. Clear. One name. Barlow Ethan M. Independent architect. Not the company. Not Miles. Not even a throwaway LLC they could blame. Just Ethan. Layla's jaw tightened. He must have filed that before the merger. Ramirez nodded once. And the company failed to contest it during the transition window. Which means... He spun his laptop around, logged into the licensing registry, tapped through a couple of verification fields, then slowly turned the screen, like a judge passing down the final sentence. The licensing certification was right there. Live. Legal. Binding. One name again. Ethan M. Barlow, current license holder. Miles slumped deeper into his chair. That's not possible. Ramirez looked him dead in the eye. You built a kingdom on land you didn't own. And the guy who does just changed the locks. The counter kept blinking in the corner. $45,000. $90,000. $135,000. Finally Layla spoke. Her voice was paper thin. Can we get him on the phone? Ramirez closed his laptop with a soft click. At this point, you'd better hope he calls you. They sat in that room for 2 hours. No breaks. No coffee. Just silence and that liability counter ticking up like karma was running the meter. 90 grand in damages. And we hadn't even made it to lunch. No one dared move. The air felt heavier by the minute. The chairs, once sleek and high-end, now felt like the waiting room outside a firing squad. Miles, bless his delusional heart, still thought he could bluff his way out. All right, worst case, he said, voice cracking. We force the system offline. Wipe the stack. Start from scratch. Our devs can rebuild the core without touching Ethan's code. Right. Miles added, scanning the room like he was waiting for anyone to back him up. Crickets. Jared from IT shook his head slowly, like it physically hurt to say it. It's not that simple. The logic core is the foundation. Every automation process, every alert, every safety protocol. It all runs through Ethan's modular framework. You can't just yank it out. You'd have to rebuild the entire architecture from the ground up. Miles scoffed, still clinging to the illusion of control. Then rebuild it. Get Devassi to scrub the framework and spin up a clean version. Jared tapped his pen anxiously against the table. That's the issue. We already tried. As soon as we alter anything downstream of Ethan's core without authorization, we trigger clause 9.3. Ramirez crossed his arms. That's the damages clause. Layla leaned forward, her eyes wide. Retroactive. Ramirez nodded. Every unauthorized deployment, past and present, accrues penalties, including any attempt to bypass or rewrite the validation layer. If you touch it, you're acknowledging unauthorized use. And since you're not the licensee, he let the silence land like a hammer. Miles rubbed his forehead like he was trying to wipe the panic off his skin. Okay, but someone else on the dev team can replicate it, right? Jared. Somebody. That's when a soft voice came from the corner. It was Natalie, junior developer, maybe 25. Still looks surprised to have a badge that opened the executive floor. Ethan didn't code like the rest of us, she said quietly. Everyone turned. She hesitated, clearly regretting speaking up, but the silence was too loud to back down now. He built everything manually. No AI. No third-party libraries. He coded entire subsystems in assembly, just to keep full control of the logic stack. No comments. No documentation. Nothing stored in Confluence. The only place Ethan's mind exists is in the code, and the only one who understands it is him. Layla muttered something under her breath. Miles leaned back in his chair, face blank. You're saying we're screwed? Natalie winced. I'm saying, he is the tech. Ramirez nodded slowly. And that makes him the only licensor. The board chair turned toward Miles, voice tight. You pitched this platform as a scalable asset. Said we owned it outright. Claimed every line of code belonged to the company. Miles didn't respond. Couldn't. The screen in the corner ticked up again. $112,500. Nobody spoke. The only sound was Layla's nails, tapping nervously against her coffee cup lid. Click, click, click. It was like watching someone try to wake up from a nightmare. But this wasn't a dream. This was a reckoning. And we all knew it wasn't over. Not even close. At exactly 12:17 p.m., the boardroom doors opened with the softest click. But the effect? Nuclear. Every head turned at once like it was choreographed. And there he was. Ethan Barlow. Same black polo. Same worn jeans. Same old wireframe glasses he'd probably owned since the Bush administration. No swagger. No theatrics. Just presence. Calm. Solid. Unshakable. In his left hand, a single USB key. In his right, a slim manila folder. He didn't scan the room. Didn't flinch at the blinking chaos still glowing behind Miles's frozen dashboard. He walked in like gravity pulled him there. Like he wasn't arriving, he was inevitable. He passed through the silence like it parted for him. Reached the board chair. Gave a small nod. Not a performance. Just a signal. I'm here. Let's fix this. Miles jumped up too fast and bumped into the table. Ethan, we were just about to. He didn't even look at Miles. With quiet, practiced movement, Ethan walked to the control panel beneath the main display and plugged in the USB key. No announcement. No commentary. Just a sequence of deliberate keystrokes. He typed a 32-character passphrase like he was ordering groceries. No pauses, no second-guessing. Then blink. The penalty counter disappeared. The dashboard reset itself. No red alerts. No warnings. Just normal. The whole room exhaled as one, like someone had taken their thumb off the panic button. But no one said a word. Not even Layla. She sat frozen, hands clenched tight in her lap, eyes locked on the screen as if even breathing might bring the blinking back. Ethan removed the USB, tucked it into his pocket, then turned to Ramirez. From the manila folder, he pulled one sheet of paper and handed it across the table. Formal notice of license terms, he said, calm and steady. Filed with the USPTO last week. Delivery confirmed. Time stamped. Ramirez took it and read carefully line by line. I caught a flicker in his expression. Subtle. Maybe respect. Maybe just relief. He gave a small nod. Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Ethan didn't reply. Didn't nod back. Just turned and started walking toward the door like he hadn't just shut down a six-figure disaster with a few quiet commands. Miles lurched forward. Wait, Ethan, we should talk about. But Ethan didn't stop. Layla opened her mouth like she might say something. An apology, a plea, who knows, but he didn't look at her. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any speech. He didn't come for revenge. He came for control. And now, every person in that room understood exactly who had it. They called a break. No drama. Just a quiet word from the board chair, followed by the low shuffle of chairs and whispered conversations that didn't dare rise above the hum of the AC. Miles didn't move. He just sat there, hands clasped together like he was trying to hold on to whatever dignity he had left. Layla had slipped out the moment Ethan left. No one said a word about it. No one asked where she'd gone. 27 minutes later, we reconvened. Same chairs. Same half-empty glasses. Same sunlight cutting across the table. But the energy, completely different. No more tension. Just clarity. The board chair entered first, followed by Ramirez and another attorney none of us had seen before. Probably outside counsel. They walked straight to Ethan's seat. He was already there, calm, collected, no phone, no notebook. Just waiting. The board chair tapped a folder in front of him. Mr. Barlow, he said. We've reviewed the licensing terms and your formal filing. Legal has prepared the reinstatement paperwork, along with a corrective agreement regarding oversight. Ethan opened the folder. 3 pages. No buzzwords. No filler. Just direct language and sharp boundaries. Page 1. Formal reinstatement as external IP custodian, with full authority to approve or suspend use of the modular logic core across all company systems. Page 2. New licensing terms, 3 times the previous rate. Immediate effect. Non-negotiable. Page 3. Retroactive forgiveness of all damages, but only if Ethan maintains ongoing oversight. The penalty counter? Wiped clean. But from that moment on, if they so much as touched a single line of code without his approval, the full penalty would come roaring back with interest. Ethan read through the contract once. No questions. No edits. He simply initialed the bottom right corner of the second page, slid the folder back across the table, and leaned back in his chair. It felt like the room was holding its breath, watching history get rewritten in total silence. Ramirez gave a small nod. It's done. The board chair leaned forward. Effective immediately, Ethan Barlow will resume oversight as sole licensee. Mr. Kenwick. Miles looked up like a kid called out in front of the class. You'll be placed on reassignment leave, pending further review. He didn't fight it. Didn't even look surprised. Just gave a faint nod and reached for his tablet like it could shield him from the truth unraveling around him. No one asked where Layla was. The board chair didn't mention her. They didn't need to. She wasn't coming back, not to that room. Not after what it had witnessed. Ethan stood, collected his copy of the contract, and walked to the door. No gloating. No final glance. No trace of the people who tried to cut him out of his own work. He didn't need validation. Because order hadn't been requested. It had simply returned. 1 week later, we were back in the investor room. Same skyline backdrop. Same polished floor. But the vibe? Completely different. Gone were the buzzwords. Disruption. Synergy. Scale. Replaced by what had been missing all along. Stability, reliability, control. Words that don't sound exciting until you remember what it feels like to lose them. The quarterly update was stripped down. No flashy motion graphics. No jargon-laced montages. Just numbers. Risk mitigation. Compliance updates. Ops reviews. Miles's name never came up. Layla? Erased. Her email redirected to a generic HR inbox. Not one investor asked about her. They didn't need to. Rooms like this don't care about explanations, only outcomes. And it wasn't until the final slide that everything really landed. One line, bottom right, under a gray heading labeled Custodial Controls. CoreLogic IP Custodian Eve Barlow Independent Licensee. No bold font. No inflated title. Just the name that mattered. A hand went up in the back. An older investor, sharp suit, sharper instincts. Is the penalty feature still active? He asked. All eyes turned to the screen, where Ethan had dialed in remotely. No video. Just a black square with 2 white letters, EB. A beep passed. Then his voice came through the speakers, clear, calm and final. Yes, he said. And the director was right, ownership is earned. Silence followed. But it wasn't awkward. It was respect. In the lower corner of the screen, one last image lingered. The liability counter, frozen at $0, Ethan's digital watermark etched faintly beneath it. Not just a brand, a boundary, a warning, a signature made of silence stitched into every line of code that powered the future they almost lost. He didn't need to show up in person. He didn't need to gloat, because he'd already won. And as the room emptied out in quiet reverence, one line played in my head. Something Ethan once said offhand, during a casual conversation about legacy systems and irreplaceable people. Back then it felt like a joke. Now, it felt like prophecy. Be grateful I even picked up the phone.